We encourage you to hit the subscribe button right now so you can listen to more podcasts of Operation Truth. Ladies and gentlemen, we do want to hear from you, so we encourage you to email us directly at operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. I want you to know that your messages are likely to be heard, addressed, and listened to on air.
Operation Truth, the show they don't want you to see. Now, here's your host, Lou.
Hi, everyone. This is Lou Palumbo. This is Operation Truth. And with me, as always, is my collaborator and co-host, Tom Fuentes, a former assistant director of the FBI, had a quite an extensive career. And I have to blame Tom for being remiss about mentioning something in his career that I think many people would find very interesting. He was an executive member on the board at Interpol that deals with 190 countries on this planet. It's a huge position, and I'm chastising Tom for having not brought that up because of the importance of credibility that this man has that is unquestioned. In any case, Tom, I'm going to get back to slapping you around in a moment, but I do want to get right into it.
I'll slap you around. Did you read my bio I sent you that says all that? No.
Yeah. You got me this time.
We're even. Okay. Call it a draw. Move on.
Okay, we'll get on down the road. In any event, I want to talk about the borders again, just very briefly. We don't have to get into a very detailed discussion about this. You know, when you go to the polls in November, take a look at your borders, ladies and gentlemen. Understand what it's doing to your country. Your major cities are all screaming for help, and they're all Democrat-run. Your border communities, the elected officials like mayors and congressmen and congresswomen on the southern border of Texas are howling at this administration. It's just a deaf ear. And as to why, we've spoken to before, we're trying to redefine this country and destroy this country for all intents and purposes. But I do want to get into a conversation with Tom now about something I actually heard Donald Trump say. I didn't hear it at the time it was being said, but it was replayed. And it mentioned China's activity or China's presence in Mexico in building and developing automobiles that I guess they apparently intend on flooding in our country. And the comment he made was very simple. It referenced to the bloodbath that would occur in our automotive industry if that were to occur. Now, shamefully, and there's no other way to say this, MSNBC, NBC, CNBC, CNN, pick your three-letter, four-letter extension of your political world, all jumped on this word bloodbath and completely misrepresented the context in which it was used. They tried to say that if he wasn't elected, there would be a bloodbath. This is as disgusting and as lowbrow as you can possibly get, which is why we encourage you to listen to us, because we're going to tell you the truth, no matter where the truth takes us. Favorable to Republicans, favorable to the Democrats. If you listen to Tom and I, we're both critical of both of these political entities because, in all candor, I don't think either one of them really understands the exercise here, which is ultimately to serve the American public. But I found it interesting. They took this interview. They completely omitted. This is what we call sound bites also. Tom and I have lived through this with media outlets where we've done interviews. They want to take a 10-second segment of what you said, omitting other parts possibly of an interview that would lend a lot to the credibility of what's being said. The media does this all the time, guys. I don't want to go too far into this discussion about interviews with the media because it isn't a very positive one. But I do want to reassure you of something. The vast majority of the people in media today are no more competent or backgrounded properly to provide you information that's credible as I am to do brain surgery. And trust me, I've got no medical experience. They prop themselves up as if there's some forms of authority. They are not. They bring men like Tom and myself on, and Chris Schwecker, and any other number of individuals that can bring some validity or truth to what they're trying to say. They really don't know what's going on. And to be honest with you, if you look at the Cuomo family, and I happen to know Chris, he's a nice guy, not as bad as everybody thinks. Neither one of these young men have ever had dirt under their fingernails, nor have many of the journalists at CNN or MSNBC. Mika Brzezinski's on a regular basis. I don't mean any disrespect, but I don't know what it is in her background that warrants her to have such a strong opinion and to be able to influence as many people as she apparently does. Guys, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to bring Tom in about our bloodbath. Your political parties are now embedded with your media outlets, which is going to distort the truth. Because depending on who you put on any given moment, you're going to get a different rendition of something that has happened. They've chosen to be extensions of your political party. This issue with Donald Trump, and I'm not necessarily a Donald Trump fan, I'm a teller of the truth. It's what we would call in law enforcement, Tom, is prima facie evidence, right, Tom? This is evidence staring you right in the eyes about their lack of responsibility. And here's the question: where's the oversight? Where's the consequences? Elon Musk even came out and said, among other people, that this was a total misrepresentation of what was said by this man. And if you can do it with Donald Trump, and they've done it with other people, by the way, we can do it with anyone. Where's the oversight? Where's the consequence here? Oh, let me see. You get to print a retraction. Can't be that way. Maybe it should be systematically or methodically taken off air until you learn your responsibility. I hate to use this term journalist because it's really not what you think it is, ladies and gentlemen. Most of the people that are in the media today could be game show hosts just as easily as be on air giving you information. But where's the oversight? Tom, I know you heard about this. Am I correct?
Correct.
Disturbing?
Well, of course, but this is a constant with, Trump will say something that sounds, more ominous than it is. There'll be a bloodbath. The context of it was, if these companies, these auto companies, build these giant plants in Mexico, like they're doing, building some smaller plants in the United States, but they're building bigger ones in Mexico. And he combines that with, if he doesn't get elected, they're going to continue. There'll be a bloodbath for the American auto industry, for the American auto worker, because these will go to Mexican auto workers. So that's where the bloodbath is going to be. He's talking about what happens if he loses. If he loses, he can't do anything about Mexican auto plants. Now, if he wins, it's not an issue because, as he said many times, he's going to put tariffs on the cars they make. So he's telling the automakers, don't be in a big hurry to build these giant plants and hire Mexicans or anybody else that's non-American to work in these plants, because you think you're going to flood the U.S. market with those cars. You're not. We're going to, again, takes him being elected. We are going to impose giant tariffs on those cars. So it's not going to be as profitable as you think to build cars in Mexico. But again, he's saying, if I lose, that's what's going to happen. If I win, the other thing is going to happen. So, to take his phraseology and, some of his typical Trumpian eloquence, to use terms that everybody gets all about, oh, what do they think he means by that? We're going to invade Mexico? He's talking about if he's not in office, he's going to put together an army on his own, mercenaries to go into Mexico and destroy these auto plants and shed blood. No, that's not what he meant. Not any reasonable person that's not a moron would know that, but that's not it. The media wants to take advantage of his phraseology, twist it a little bit to make it look like he's going to cause some kind of a war. How's he going to do that when he's not in office? That was the point of this. So, what
they were trying to say, though, Tom, was that he was expressing what would happen in the country if he wasn't elected. But by the way, guys, not the first time at the rodeo with Donald Trump. They throw this term around about dictator. If you want to see dictatorship, take a look at the current administration, just for the record. Let me close my window for a second, guys. Hold on. I'm going to go back to where I was there. And just so we're clear, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the first time at the rodeo with Donald Trump and misrepresenting things that he said. They threw around this concern about he would become a dictator. Please take a look at this current administration. They're jamming it down your throat. The borders are a prime example of what that is. This whole thing with bail reform, it's being jammed down your throat like dictators. This is not part of a process that lent itself to anybody's opinion. And now, even though people are in opposition to the border, a lot of them Democrats are in opposition to this no bail policy in cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C., which is a whole nother discussion, New York, wherever you want to talk about, LA, being jammed down your throat, whether you like it or not. And I have to tell you something interesting, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent with Eric Adams. Not an Eric Adams fan. We'll tell you this. He's told the truth about the impact of the borders on the city, but twice he went up to Albany, the capital of New York, to try to persuade them to amend this bail reform because of the way it's pigeonholing the country. And now I'm going to go back to Donald Trump and the dictator comment. Donald Trump said, and I heard him say it, not secondhand by someone that wanted to put a spin on it, which is what they did with Bloodbath. He laughed. Yeah, you're right. I'm going to be a dictator the first day in office. I'm shutting the borders down, and he's going to open up the pipeline. The term he used was drill, baby, drill. All they did was take that and run with it about being a dictator. Tom, I know you're aware of that as well. And these are just
yeah, and on that topic, he said that will be the only day. I'll be a dictator for one day to close the border and drill, baby, drill, and try to undo the immediate damage of Biden administration executive orders, starting back with the first day Biden was in office. So yeah, he said we're going to do this, this, and this, and that gets twisted. He's going to be a dictator. Like what? They start calling him Hitler. They start calling him Stalin, whatever. That's not what he said, and that's not what he meant. He clarified that. How much dictatoring is he going to do for one day? Just maybe enough to undo a little bit of the damage that Biden has done from day one.
Well, Tom, the other thing that's interesting, because you're right about this, they referenced him as Hitler. For everyone that is not understanding a little of the family tie, his son-in-law, Jared, is Jewish. His daughter has converted, Ivanka, to Judaism. The children are being raised Jewish. So I just want to make sure that in your clearest thinking, you reference Donald Trump as Hitler. I don't know how much more irresponsible the media is going to be allowed to conduct themselves in that manner before there's some kind of oversight. Do we have to sue them when they knowingly disseminate information? I don't get this, Tom. And I don't know of another institution in this country that lacks the oversight the way the media does. They tell you what they want, whenever they want, whether it's truth attached or not. It's driven by political agenda, and the motivation, so we're clear, is to convince you how you're supposed to vote. That's what's so egregious about this. That's the agenda. They want to fill you with lies, which is exactly what both of these instances Tom and I just spoke to, right? The dictator issue and the bloodbath issue, so they can tell you why you should vote for whom. Where is the oversight? This isn't about your First Amendment. You've taken up the mantle to provide information to the American public. I think there should be some oversight there. I think there should be some responsibility and monitoring of what you say and what drives it factually. I don't know how much more we need to talk about this, ladies and gentlemen, but this is the root of your problem. Your media creates your narrative, and they create your optic. And this is, again, prima facie evidence as to what exactly is wrong with your media today. And by the way, we get a little bit of that with Fox also. Fox tells the tale the way they want to tell the tale. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not particularly a Sean Hannity fan, not because the information that he disseminates isn't accurate. Most of the time it is, but I don't like this thing about ridicule and demeaning and making fun of the president. The president is a problem, not because he can't walk up a flight of stairs or he falls down. We have bigger issues than his physical agility testing at this point, guys. The future of this country weighs in the balance. Tom, I want to transition, if you don't mind, sir, into this intelligence that popped up about Hezbollah staging a terrorist incident in New York City. You have any familiarization with this, Tom?
Well, yeah, you have one guy confessing that he's going to be part of this plot, but I don't know background of that, how credible it is, or what they have, or how the information came. So there's more that we have to learn about this story than to just go off and say, "Oh yeah, they were going to do this." They're perfectly Hezbollah. Excuse me, Hezbollah is perfectly capable. They have the people they need to do it. So does Hamas. Training and gathering in Mexico. They can walk into our country and then get their way to New York, maybe on a U.S. flight or, immigration taking them there, whatever. But yeah, we're very vulnerable to this. Everybody has talked about it. Now, you mentioned how Director Wray of the FBI 8, 9, 10 months ago was saying that the border being wide open is a threat to national security. Well, he did say that. However, in the interim, he's clarified the threat to national security over and over and over as MAGA, as supporters of Trump, as conservatives, as white supremacists. They're the real threat to U.S. And Christopher Wray keeps saying that over and over. Yeah, all these months ago he mentioned Hezbollah and Hamas in the open border, and then now repeatedly the threat are white Americans that voted and support Trump. That's his real fear. And their policies and what they go after and who they try to go after to arrest are just that. People that support Trump, MAGA.
Tom, we've been warned by 10 former senior executives of the FBI about their concerns about the safety of this nation. I know you're not a Christopher Wray fan, and I understand why. But that doesn't invalidate what he did say, which happens to be truthful. The country's in grave peril.
No, he did say that. He did say that. And that was a concern when he said it 8 or 10 months ago. What I'm saying is he's highlighted 10 other threats that are more of a threat than that. So he's just said it. Oh, yeah, the threat, the border, the wide open border. What has he done to promote closing the border or having systems in place at the border to vet people coming in, try and determine who they are, take their fingerprints, DNA, pictures, whatever? Nothing. He's done nothing about that. They continue to go after MAGA and the other people like that.
Tom, not for anything, but I said this the other day. Your wife went through, I would say, extensive and necessary screening. Why only your wife, though? Why isn't everybody?
Everybody that legally tries to become a citizen goes through that. Not just only my wife. It's people that come into this country illegally. Now, if you come in legally, you go through all the vetting, the DNA and fingerprinting and photographing and records from every country, police records certified in every country you ever lived in. Now, my wife has hundreds and hundreds of friends who were born in China. Later, either they went through Canada or they went through Singapore or other countries, but became United States citizens. And they are very protective of this country, wanting it to succeed, wanting it to be, not run over by policies like Biden and some of these other people. And they're very strong. They're very patriotic. So, yeah, they went through, and they all went through this process to get in.
So Tom, what's so difficult about them embracing the concept that if anybody, regardless of your point of origin or the nature in which you access the country, be compelled to give DNA and fingerprints? Hey, let me say one thing. I don't expect the Democrats to be saying this, because the Democrats just think we should have open borders, which is another very bizarre, dangerous concept, much like the last one we spoke to in the just prior podcast about no ID when you walk into a polling station. I don't understand this mentality, but what I really don't understand is why the American public isn't up in arms a little bit more. But the bottom line is, we've just sucked every ounce of integrity, honesty, and trustworthiness out of this government. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize to you. I'm still transmitting from the moon, so you might see some erratic pictures showing up here with my hair doing things. It's just the moon. I don't know what to say to you guys, but Tom,
so you're an extraterritorial. You're a threat to national security.
I got my fingerprints and DNA, Tom, before I got here.
You're from another planet, though. What are we going to do about that?
I gave my fingerprints and my DNA when I landed on the moon, and they know in case there's any crime committed, they'll be able to collect forensic information and expedite the solving of that crime, which protects the moon people. You know what I mean? Concept we would like to apply to the United States, by the way, or planet Earth, perhaps. I don't know how to quantify that. I want to tell you, talk a little bit, guys, about this whole gun control discussion too, which every now and then, in a very disingenuous manner, rears its head. You know, we're still talking about gun control. You had control of the House and the Senate. You got nothing done. You lied about this bipartisan, this unprecedented, record-setting bipartisan gun control bill where we had enhanced background checks where people are full of poop. They still can't explain to you what that means because there's no such thing, period. And also the funding of mentally ill facilities and funding for our children's safety, neither of which have occurred. Those are something that should be undertaken by each of the individual states, not the federal government. It would be nice if the federal government would fund states that were, say, more financially depressed to accomplish that mission. Guys, I'll tell you, in Florida, on any given day, you have at least one sheriff from the local jurisdiction here on the campus, at least one, sometimes two and three. You go to a football game, you have 4, 5 marked units and a supervisor's unit, which I'm able to identify because I've come to learn who one of the lieutenants is in the community. I don't understand how Florida is able to do this and the rest of the country isn't. We know it isn't happening in California because I get called about providing security in some of the schools in California, that unified school district. The bitter pill for them to swallow is having people on their property armed, as if their children don't navigate the rest of the world with people that are armed. We are trained professionals from the law enforcement community. We don't leave our brains at the door when we walk into your property or your perimeter. I don't know what's going on with this academic world, which is a whole other discussion, which came to light with MIT, University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, Johns Hopkins. Some of the finest learning institutions in this country are just politically awry as well. But the thing about gun control, guys, they have to stop lying to you about this because it isn't going to be gun control. Every time they mention that word, gun sales skyrocket. Every time there's a mass shooting, gun sales skyrocket. And I'll tell you something you're going to find interesting. I did an interview with Al Jazeera from Qatar. And through the course of the conversation, the gentleman said to me, why is it every time you have a mass shooting or an incident of any type, your gun sales skyrocket? And I tried to explain to them it's a very simple problem. They don't believe the police will be there when you need them, and they don't trust our government. And those are two very sad statements to make that we should never have been able to make in this country. I don't think our founding fathers would have ever envisioned the condition this country's in today. And I know, Tom, you have some sentiment about this as well. You know, if you care to share it with me, I'd be interested in hearing your point of view.
Well, at the time of our founding fathers, practically everybody had a gun. They had to go out and hunt for their food. They had, they were on the frontier, or as the states were expanding into the territories, into the Ohio Valley and some of the other ones further south, that the people that were the frontiers people or the farmers out on the front at the edge of the Union at the time, they had guns. They all had muskets. So the reason the Second Amendment got put into the Constitution as an important thing was they were fearing the tyranny of the government, of the British. And in those days, you didn't have governments that completely outclassed local citizens in armament. Yeah, they had some big ships, but they didn't have rockets. They didn't have satellites. They didn't have fighter jets and bombers and intercontinental ballistic missiles. So the government soldiers had muskets. Most of the private citizens had muskets. So the government wasn't that more powerfully armed than the locals. And you see that when you read the history of the battles that occurred during the Revolutionary War. They were pretty close between, George Washington's colonial armies and the British. And the British weren't in a position to immediately get reinforcements across the ocean to come in and help their soldiers. So yeah, it was a different environment at that time, 250 years ago.
And Tom, just to go further in this discussion about the founding fathers, we were concerned about tyranny and we were concerned about foreign invaders. And just to remind everybody historically, and Tom is 10 times the historian I am, believe me, I did go to school though. 1812, the British made another run at us. They burnt our White House. Oh, that's right. We're living in real time today. A foreign invader, Russia and the Ukraine, a foreign invader in Israel known as Hamas. And by the way, as they're talking about disarming you, or wanting to regulate what firearms you're permitted to have, we're flooding these countries with assault rifles. In the Ukraine, you walk into a police station, they run a background check on you, and the next thing you know, you're in possession of an assault rifle, an M4 and AK-47. Our listeners may know or not know what that is. But guys, I have to tell you something you're going to find really interesting, because I spent an enormous amount of time garnering knowledge about firearms, weapons systems, because it has an application to my profession, and I've done some extensive consulting with a number of people, individuals, even groups, even a law enforcement agency or two. The reality of it is, I'm not crazy about guns. I'm not crazy about anything that's intrinsic purpose is to harm another person. With all that being said, intellectually, you need to get in the real world with me and understand where we're living today, guys. This is becoming exponentially more dangerous every day. More and more people are buying guns. Demographics that never bought guns. The Jewish community, by the way, in New York, I can only speak to there, it's going through the roof. After COVID, the Chinese community or Asian community in general, going through the roof. In New York, 17 gun stores opened up in Nassau and Suffolk counties. These are big jurisdictions. Their combined populations larger than 38 states in the country. A lot of people there. But my point is, we're going in the wrong direction. And to really give you a little tie into this, we're now at 29 states that allow you to carry a concealed weapon without a permit based on the Second Amendment of the Constitution. Now, Tom and I are former law enforcement agents. I've yet to talk to a law enforcement agent that agrees with that. We need to add more controls, especially today with the sophistication of these weapons, their ability to carry 33 rounds in a Glock magazine. We need to know more about you, not less. But that doesn't lend itself to impeding your ability to legally carry a concealed weapon. I hate to say it. In order to survive, sometimes you have to change the way you're operating. We're having a problem with that concept in this country. And where before I would discourage people from acquiring firearms, I encourage you to do it today. I encourage you to be trained. I encourage you to read the law, because that's where you'll get yourself in trouble, especially if you brandish a weapon of any type in public, in proximity to people, God forbid, children. The accountability is extreme, as it should be. Country's teetering, guys. You know, the one comfort I have here is that no one could ever occupy this land. They don't even know how many guns we have here. The light conservative estimate is 500 million. I do want to tell you something else you're going to find interesting. We have quite a number of Class 3 states in this country. A Class 3 state is a state where you may legally buy a machine gun. You spend it's either $200 or $250. You submit it to the Treasury Department or ATF. I'm forgetting which one it is. It used to be Treasury. And you can go out and buy a full automatic weapon, much the same as you're using in the military or law enforcement. Guys, there are people here, trust me, because I know them personally, that have what they call tripod-mounted 50 caliber machine guns, which are designed to shoot down aircraft. You know, what this country should do is put a little more energy into galvanizing this country and getting us on the same sheet of music instead of us dividing us over these topics that they intentionally lie to us about. Gun control is one of them. That's the truth. And unfortunately, they're here to stay. Just kind of like transgender people, not to go off on a tangent, but let's create a place for them. Not near our children. Nobody should go near your children, regardless of your sexual preference. Children remain under the domain of their parents until a parent demonstrates an inability or lack of willingness to properly take care of that. And then the state will step in and decide what's best for the child. But as far as my mentality goes, make a place for everybody. Your voice to everyone. That's how I feel about it. But this whole gun control discussion, this is just another lie. It's like talking about electricity, Tom, the transition to electricity. It isn't happening, guys. It isn't going to happen. Even this person that poses as our president said months ago, we're going to be dependent upon fossil fuel for 10 years, probably more. Really? Did you figure that out because the steam turbines are fueled by fossil fuel and nuclear energy? There's that bad word. That's our way out of this mess, by the way, guys. A word nobody in politics talks about: the development of safe, clean, efficient, cost-effective nuclear energy, so we don't have rolling blackouts in the fifth largest economy in the world, California. This is such a disgusting country we've become because we've abandoned the truth. Let's just try telling the truth. Tom, we're going to close for today. I want to give you the final words, sir, on a topic near and dear to your heart, or an overall assessment of things that you're concerned about. And I know you're concerned about the future of the country, just as we all are.
Lou, when you talk about firearms and you talk about how many groups are out buying these firearms, it's the government's fault. The government is supposed to protect us. If we knew that you could, if somebody's trying to break in your home or attack you, and you could pick up your phone and call 911 and the police would be there within a minute or two and save you, great. You wouldn't even think about buying a gun. You'd be perfectly satisfied that the number one responsibility of the federal or state and local governments is to protect the citizen. And if they're not protecting you, then you need to protect yourself. And unfortunately, within the last couple of years, with all this woke stuff and prosecutors that won't prosecute, cops that won't defend you and be cops because they've been defunded, demoralized, whatever, that we've basically said to our citizens, if you want to be protected, don't call us. Call your local gun shop, get some training, get a gun, and you're on your own. Good luck. And so therefore, that's why the gun sales are skyrocketing, because people are not stupid. They realize that the government doesn't even claim to want to protect them, doesn't do anything to show that they're trying to keep them safe and alive. They just don't. And so therefore, depending where you live, most people out in the country knew that all along. They might have wild animals, they might have any number of issues, or they had to hunt for their food. So they had guns. But in the city, theoretically, and you have a police station maybe down the block where the police could be at your house in a minute or two, but they're not going to be. You could call and they're not going to respond, or they're not there to be able to respond anymore. You're on your own. This time you're in the middle of a city, you're on your own. And that's the problem with gun topics, gun control, telling the people what they can have, that would be unnecessary to tell any of that to the people. If the people were confident, my government will protect me, and they're not.
Well, you and I both know, Tom, in addition to the overall ineptness of the government, we went after law enforcement over this George Floyd case in particular. And for those of you that think you know about what happened with George Floyd, first of all, we have too many George Floyds, which is a whole nother discussion and has some type of intellectualization attached to it, that if you have the chops, engage me. But there's a video, a documentary out called The Fall of Minneapolis. You should look at this video. It'll show you the entire encounter with George Floyd, including him asking to be laid on the ground. It'll show you the autopsy report with his fentanyl and his methamphetamine levels in his body, sufficient enough to kill anybody, plus blockages in his arteries in the medical examiner's report. And that's just to gloss over it. But where I was going with this is that you've chosen to take the pensions and put them in jail. So don't expect them to show up for you guys. I'm just telling you now. I come from that community, and it disheartens me to say that to you. I'll tell you something you're going to find interesting generationally. I left the police department as a result of a line of duty injury. Okay, I'm not going to go into the history of it. But back in 1979, 1980, your heart was still with this job in the public. And if the public was in trouble, as a retired law enforcement agent, we would help the public. We would step up and help you because we had the know-how. We understood the law. We knew how to assess situations. We knew how to use force, deadly physical force, and other. We were prepared to continue to function as if we were law enforcement agents. Guys, that's gone. I hate to break it to you. Nobody is going to risk their freedom to step up to the plate, help you out, and then potentially end up in jail because somebody in the liberal element in this country feels it's a form of reparation to prosecute your police or let the criminal element act with, I would say, without deference. We're in a crisis here right now, guys, and this next election is critical. I promised to end this podcast, and fortunately, I just lied to you. I want to tell you something interesting going on in New York City. Hochul, in her omnipotent wisdom, volunteered on the show The View. I saw the excerpt that the crime rate in the subways is up 45%. Okay, she deployed 750 National Guard, 250 state troopers. State troopers in New York are excellent. I first want to tell you this. The taxpayers are paying for that. This isn't free. By the way, we had a shooting on the subway after the bag checks were going on. I've seen what the bag checks look like. It's like this token effort If you're going to search a bag, because I've done it, recovered guns in bags. Just for the record, I could tell you where I was when I did it. If you're going to do it properly. But the bottom line is, this is just one perpetuation of a lie. Then they had, I don't know if it was the chief of patrol or the chief of patrol, because the chief of department's a 4-star, 3-star chief of patrol. Made it simple. Enforce the law and prosecute. And that will deter. You have to have enforcement. Otherwise, you will have recidivism, or another way, redundancy. And that's where we're living. So we put up the smoke and mirror routine of deploying people. By the way, guys, you'll probably find it amusing that the Metropolitan Transit Authority, or whatever they are in Chicago, is asked for the same thing. They want the National Guard in their train system. Ask yourself, what has happened to your country? Ask yourself that your children cannot go to school without an armed person like myself, or an off-duty sheriff, or a sheriff on duty assigned to the academic environment so they're safe. We don't even have the courage to confront the scope or scale of this mistake. We've lost a generation of children. Our wake-up call was Columbine, April 20th, 1999. We don't even want to get into the conversation. Lack of courage, lack of honor, lack of integrity, lack of truth. That's what's riddling this country today. And we're trying to course correct you. And we don't want you to buy into everything you say, but we want you to understand this. This is not about me, and it's not about Tom. We both had our day in the sun. You have to understand Tom's journey in the FBI, and I mentioned to it earlier, and I'm not going to chastise him again because he's going to chastise me again. But on top of the fact that he headed up the FBI's international operation, he was on the executive board of Interpol. Guys, do some research on Interpol. And I know of another friend of mine, former FBI, that was involved with Interpol as well. That's as serious a seat as you can get in. All right, guys, listen, you've heard me rant enough for the day, and Tom, as always, is an abundance of knowledge and information. Guys, you don't have to believe us. Fact check us. We're not MSNBC, CNN, Fox. We just want to spoon feed you and make you think whatever we say you believe. We're trying to give you some guidance. We're trying to give you light at the end of the tunnel. And if you don't think there's darkness in this country, I hate to say this to you. In November, if we don't change this political environment, you're not going to have a country to live in that you recognize. That's it for today. OperationTruthOfficial@gmail.com is how you can reach us, Tom. I can't quantify your value of participation, period. There's nothing else to say. And I promise to read your resume.
Thank
See you
you,
next
Luke.
time, guys. See you next time, guys.